Good morning, everyone. This is my PowerPoint presentation on environmental changes. Environmental change is a change or disturbance of the environment most often caused by human influences and natural ecological processes. Causes of environmental changes. There are many causes of environmental changes on Earth. Natural events cause change in climate. For example, large volcanic eruption releases tiny particles into the atmosphere that block sunlight, resulting in surface cooling that lasts for a few years. Variations in ocean currents, such as El Nino, can also change the distribution of heat and precipitation. Over longer time span, tens to hundreds of thousands of years, natural changes in the geographical distribution of energy from the sun and in the amount of greenhouse gases and dust in the atmosphere have caused the climate to shift from ice age to relatively warmer period. On a large time scale, the presence of life on Earth has changed the environment of the planet radically, transforming a predominantly reducing atmosphere made up of methane, CH4, and ammonia NH3 to today's oxygen-rich gaseous envelope. Greenhouse phenomenon. In addition to desertification, changes caused by human activities include the recent increase in the atmospheric concentration of both greenhouse gases and sulfate particles, aerosols. Greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide cover the atmosphere infrared window and trap heat. Data from satellites can trace changes in the globally average surface temperature of Earth and can be used to predict temperature change in the future. According to some models, if current trend continues, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will double up during the 21st century, and the average rate of warming of Earth's surface over the next 100 years will probably be greater than it was at any time in the last 10,000 years. The current best estimate of the expected rise of globally average surface temperature relative to 1990 is 1 degree Celsius to 3.5 degrees Celsius by the year 2100, with continued increase thereafter. Ozone depletion. Around 1985, scientists taking ozone O3 measurements in the Antarctic detected an alarming decrease in stratospheric ozone concentration over the South Pole. This decline in atmospheric ozone was verified by instruments aboard the National Aeronautics and Space Administration's NASA's Nimbus 7 satellite. Under usual circumstances, ultraviolet radiation helps create and destroy ozone molecules. It is strong enough to break both ozone and oxygen molecules into individual oxygen atoms. This destruction of molecules allows the free oxygen atom to bond with other oxygen molecules and form more ozone. However, chlorofluorocarbons, CFC compounds such as the freon used in refrigeration systems upset this balance and destroy ozone. CFCs also are greenhouse gases. The depletion of ozone caused by CFCs result in increased ultraviolet radiation at Earth's surface that could be highly damaged to sensitive Arctic life forms. Ozone losses over the Arctic could also reduce ozone levels over the middle latitudes as a result of the mixing of air masses. Steps and initiatives taken by the government to control air pollution and ozone depletion, eliminate production and release of known ozone depleting chemicals such as CFCs and HCFCs where remotively possible. The government of Delhi started the Red Light on Gaddi Off campaign. Environment Minister Gopal Roy appealed to the citizens to turn their cars off and at red light to help reduce air pollution. Government has started Green India, Clean India movement. COP26. What is COP26? It is the 26th iteration of the Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. This annual meeting brings together the 197 members of the convention to take concerned action on climatic changes. What is the talk or discussion in this meeting? At the meeting, country representatives discuss issues such as climate change, mitigation, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions that cause the planet to warm, adaptation to irreversible environmental impacts caused by change in climate, and financing to support developing countries in their efforts to move away from fossil fuels and become more resilient to the impacts of climatic changes. Conference of Parties 26 COP26 Glasgow 2021. The Glasgow meeting was the 26th session of the Conference of Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, or COP26. These meetings are held everywhere to construct a global response to climate change. Each of these meetings produce a set of decisions which are given different names. In the current case, this has been called the Glasgow Climate Pact. While not legally binding, it was agreed countries will meet next year in Egypt for COP26 to pledge further cuts to emissions of carbon dioxide, CO2, a greenhouse gas which causes climate change. This is to try for keep temperature rises with 1.5 degrees Celsius. As of this point, the United Nations calculate that the world is in track for 2.5 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of this century. It was also agreed to phase down the usage of coal by countries. The Glasgow decision calls on countries to revisit and strengthen their 2030 targets by the end of 2022 to align them with the Paris Agreement's temperature goals, as was agreed in COP21 in 2015. Indian India also announced its five-fold plan, among which one has to achieve net zero carbon neutrality by 2070. The efforts in Glasgow by developed countries to push the net zero emissions by 2020 demonstrates the inequitable nature of this. The efforts to equate India and other developing countries with the US and Europe as the worst emitters has no base at all. In a report by carbonbrief.com, it was found that the US, Russia, the UK, Japan, and Canada account for 10% of the world population, but 39% of the cumulative emissions. On the other hand, China, India, Brazil, and Indonesia account for 42% of the world population, but just 23% of the cumulative emissions. India's plan to achieve net zero by 2070 is not an act that should be disregarded, but rather one that should be applauded in what was a highly inequitable demand of the developed countries. The Glasgow climate meeting has ended with a pact weaker than many had hoped for, yet it forms a good base for the upcoming COP27 in Egypt, which we hope would be much more successful and equitable. Thank you, and I hope that you all like my presentation.